Welcome to Fire and Life Talk, transforming a world one heart at a time.
Well, hello and welcome to another enlightening episode of Fire and Life Talk. I am your host, Pastor Gary, and we're here to encourage, to empower, and to equip our viewers to live their best life. Today, we have a very special guest, Naomi Nussbaum, the Executive Director of OneFamily. Naomi will be sharing the incredible work of OneFamily, what OneFamily is doing as emotional and first responders in Israel. Trust me, this is going to be a great episode and you're going to love her and love OneFamily before it's all over with. But before we dive in, let me introduce my wonderful wife, my friend, my good thing, and just everything. Let me just bring in Pastor Gina. Hey, Gina, how you doing?
Hello, and hello to everybody.
You know what? I stumbled through that one today. I don't know what's going on, but we but we are here. We're here. Yes. So, with our ministry, we want to encourage everyone to go to www.fireandlife.org, and it'll tell you everything about our mission and what we do. But today we want to encourage you, whatever platform you're watching on, to comment, to ask questions. We're here for you, and we'll do our best to get your comments and questions on the air. So I want to get right into it. Here's someone, I was going to say a good friend. We just met a few minutes ago, but I think we can consider her a good friend already. Yeah. So let's bring on Naomi Nussbaum.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Hey, Naomi.
Thank you for being here.
I hope I got that name right.
Yeah, you sure did. Thank you.
Yeah, right. Good deal. Good deal. So we want to welcome you to Fire and Life Talk. And Naomi, we're thrilled to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much.
Your work with OneFamily is truly inspiring. As we were looking at the websites and just doing our due diligence. And so we look forward to hearing about the incredible impact that you have and your team on making emotional first responders in Israel.
Yeah, so let me explain emotional first responders, right? It's kind of it's a catchy title. Everybody knows what a first responder is, right? They're the people that rush in to put out a fire or to save a life, right?
Yeah.
And we're kind of emotional first responders in that we will rush in when there's a trauma, but we don't leave. We stay with people.
Oh, right. Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So before October 7th in Israel, there were terror attacks. That's part of life there, sadly. And if something happened at a bus stop, or, if there's a random stabbing or a car rams or something like that, we go to hospital rooms, we go to funerals, we go to shiva calls. And a shiva call is after there's a loss of life, Jewish families literally come together and sit for an entire week and receive guests who all come to pay their respects, right? So as emotional first responders, we kind of rush to be right there and introduce ourselves and offer our services and let people know that they will never be alone. We'll always be there for them and we can help them with whatever they need. The difference is we don't then drop them off somewhere and go home, right? We stay with them.
Right.
We offer immediate counseling, for the acute bereavement or a traumatic phase, but then there's PTSD, which can last a lifetime without
Yeah.
treatment.
Yeah.
So we have like initial immediate services, mid-range services, long-term services, a full range.
That's awesome. What I'm hearing from that is one of the most important things I think in any aspect of life is someone being present,
Yes.
showing that you care.
Yeah,
Hey, I'm here for you. If we don't have the resources personally, we're gonna find the resources.
exactly. That's exactly the feeling, right? And we can't put the pieces of their life back together, right? We can't bring back a loved one as much as we wish we could.
Yeah.
But we can say, we're going to sit here and cry with you. We are going to hold your hand. We're going to get you that next meal, or we're going to help you out with the rent payment this month. And we're going to give you therapy, introduce you to other people who are in similar situations. And we're going to walk you through this. We're going to hold your hand every step of the way.
That's
That's,
awesome.
yeah, that is. And um, Naomi, what is it? I mean, you've just explained a variety of techniques, but is there some specific that that's in your in your structure that you immediately use?
Every terrorist attack is so different, and
Yeah.
even after October,
Yeah.
right? Nobody has ever seen, in our modern world, nobody has ever seen an attack like this,
Yes.
right? The gruesome, horrific torture that took place on October 7th is unprecedented in our times, you know. Um, so they're kind of rewriting the textbook on trauma as we speak. That's the first thing.
Mm.
The second thing that people don't necessarily realize is that Israel is an active war zone at the moment.
Yeah.
So we're trying to triage an injury, except there's still active injuries, right? Meaning more and more people are being killed almost daily. And I hope that stops immediately. And of
Yeah.
course, we all pray for the safe return of the hostages immediately. Nobody should be tortured like that.
Mhm.
But there's like active ongoing injury. When you're in Israel, if you turn on the news, you're seeing the explosions in the north, in the south. You're hearing fighter jets fly overhead.
Wow.
All the I was in Israel last week, and I took
Okay.
the Israel train, and the bus system. You're on public transportation with the army, with troops that are, moving from here to there, all around. Um, so, you know, people who are trying to recover from something, it can't necessarily do that when there are still red alerts, because there are still rockets falling, there are attacks in the
Wow.
north, fires from it. Everybody's children is in the army,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
troops are everywhere, reserve troops, the older men who have families and jobs. It's all over. There's no avoiding it. So it's really hard to work on recovery when there's still active injury, right? So those are the two, right? October 7th is just an unprecedented thing all in and of itself, similar to the Holocaust. And then the fact that there's not a calm recovery period, that it's an active trauma
Yeah, it's still
period.
going on. You're reminded every day in every aspect of life.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What's going on?
So, we certainly do have techniques that we use, and we're doing our best even with the situation. One of the ways that we pivoted since October 7th, right, is that we've always had therapeutic retreats for victims, but now we're taking people out of the country deliberately to give them respite. Right.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
that's a first way to get to know them, to get them to build a trusting rapport, right? Because we're essentially strangers. And who wants to talk about a stranger about the worst thing that's ever happened to you, right?
Right.
So let's take, for example, the bereaved parents, because so many children were murdered on October 7th at the music festivals, and so many
Hmm.
troops were murdered, but they're children, right? They're 18, 19, 20 years old, the people who are dying. So we've taken about 650 bereaved parents on retreats to Cyprus, where there are no red alerts, there's no rockets falling, there's no troops walking all around the streets. there's nothing on TV that has to do with explosions, right? We
Yeah.
take them to something, a very calm retreat environment where they're surrounded by nature, and it kind of helps their body settle down a bit
Mm-hmm.
after the trauma, right? There's so much physical trauma. Also, people get used to they get into the habit of being in a grief response
Yeah.
when they're alone, right? You know how trauma makes you feel like you're the only one suffering and nobody understands and you have nobody you can speak to about it. So they
Right.
kind of, coil up by themselves and they can sit in the darkness, whether it's real darkness or metaphorical darkness.
Yeah.
We want to bring them out of that. We get them out of their environment, away from the memories, away from their habits, put them in a beautiful natural setting with other people who understand their pain and with grief and trauma informed specialists. And we always have somebody who's been in their situation before. So we'll take a victim who also lost a child, but maybe that happened 5, 10, 15 years ago. And they're now an excellent role model for these people to say, oh, look, that person lived through this. And so I know it's possible. And I have footsteps that I can follow in.
You
So,
know,
yeah.
Naomi, that was my next question.
Yeah.
The volunteers and your staff,
Yeah.
you're actually living it as well. So what type of training, what type of what type of training do you prepare your volunteers for your role or your staff for this particular role? Because I know the one awesome thing, I was like, hey, I want to go to Cyprus. This sounds so good,
Yeah.
because you're giving the people peace.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when they have that peace, that mental peace, it relaxes your body. Because
Yeah.
we know that PTS in a short and long period can start affecting our organs and
Absolutely.
in our
Right.
body. So how do you train your responders and your staff?
Okay, super interesting. I just want to throw in one quick fact. We actually were instrumental in helping the internists, like all of the doctors in Israel, get trained in top of the line trauma protocol
Yeah.
that's used by the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Defense in Israel. We had training days in Hebrew, in English, and in French so that all of the primary care physicians would know, then be trauma informed and know the proper trauma protocol. So because there's not enough psychologists and therapists and
Right.
trauma informed people to deal with this kind of trauma on mass, in this scale. Okay, so we're helping the internists get there. We hire psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, right? But we
Yes.
also train volunteers, and that's really interesting. When I walked into my headquarters a couple weeks ago, I saw a woman who I know very well from photos and videos whose husband was murdered 6 years ago. Her name is Yael, gorgeous woman. And I was like, hey, I know her. What's she doing here? And it turns out that she now works there. She's one of the
Wow.
volunteers. And I was like, wait, I have to hear what's going on. And she explained to me that when her husband was murdered 6.5 years ago, her life was shattered, seriously shattered. They had 6 young children together. She was devastated. She said that OneFamily knew exactly how to speak to her and what to say and what to do
Yeah.
for her when she didn't know what she needed herself. And we've been doing this for such a long time that we knew exactly what to say to really see her and made her feel seen. We made her feel heard and understood. And we were able to coax her out of that horrible dark spot and back into life again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like you ever reach recovery or healing as if it's a destination that can actually be reached. It's like there's good days and bad days, and hopefully the ratio improves to many more good days than bad days, right?
Right.
But we're never going to bring that husband back. So it's, we kind of teach resilience. The resilience is the most powerful tool. We kind of have to acknowledge that that hole in your heart is going to be there forever. How do we make you strong enough to support that hole in your heart? And can you support some days or moments of joy while you're supporting that hole in your heart? Can you do both at the same time? Can you be happy for your children on their birthdays, or when they finish a year of school, or when they bring home an award, even though you lost a loved one and you're grieving terribly? Can you do both things simultaneously?
Wow.
So anyway, Yael learned all of these skills and more from everything that she went through with OneFamily.
Yeah.
And after October 7th, she just knew that she had to start volunteering with new widows immediately.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So she came straight to OneFamily the next day and said, "Who can I help? Let's go. Let's do
Yeah.
this."
Yeah.
Wow.
And sometime, she might not be a psychologist, but she's somebody who has survived having her husband murdered and
Right.
still raising their 6 children. She knows how to talk to a widow in a way that nobody else can
That's right.
talk. So she has received some grief and trauma counseling and training, and she is trauma informed, but there's absolutely nothing like somebody being truly
Right.
heard and understood and seen in
Right.
the way that Yael can do it. Because
Mhm.
no matter how much training I can't, my husband was never murdered. So I'm never going to be as effective as
Right.
she is. Right. And I'll tell you something else that's amazing, which is also new after October 7th. We've always had groups for bereaved mothers and bereaved fathers and bereaved siblings and children, and right. But now we've expanded who we treat with the demographics. So she's a volunteer that helps widows. But
Wow.
what was explained to me is that they now have separate groups for widows. They have groups for the widows who lost their husbands, but they're raising young children, and how difficult that is. They feel like they don't have a breath to grieve for their husband because they're raising these children on their own, and they're pulled in all these different directions, and they're exhausted and they're miserable, right?
Yeah.
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 Then there are the widows who are maybe over 50, whose children are grown and out of the house, and they just lost their husband and their best friend, and they're literally all alone in the house. And that's a different type of grief, right?
Right.
And there are widows who are really young, who were just married, and they never got to have children with their husband, and they're bitter. They feel like they never got to have their kids before their husband was murdered. They need their own support group. And then the final support group are the engaged couples. There are, there's not even a word for them, right?
Right.
There are young people who were engaged. Their fiancés were called into the army, or they went to the Nova Music Festival, and they were murdered, and they never even made it to their wedding day. We now have a support group for them, which is sort of the widows division, but they never even made it to their wedding ceremony. So all of these groups and many more are getting very specialized attention from people who were in their position, along with psychologists and social workers and psychiatrists and anybody else that they need help from. We're gonna get it. We're gonna get it for them.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, Naomi, this sounds like a big vision. Do you have other organizations that come in and support you in any other ways, or?
No, it's kind of the opposite. Like, we are the organization, and sometimes people want to support us. We are on the ground doing all of this work, and we have been for 23 years.
Wow.
So we sort of found that secret sauce of what works, like proven effectiveness. And that was in place on October 6th. So that when October 7th happened, we had to shift a bit, but our biggest job is to scale and help more people. We knew how to do it. It's very different than the organizations that started helping terror victims on October 8th. And we're grateful for everybody that's helping, but it's different to have a large, well-established organization in place.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank God.
Yeah, and it's so many different. When you opened up and you shared with us about your personal experiences on your trip to Israel,
Oh,
I don't know, it kind of put me in a space like I guess I never thought about it. Sometime when we're in a distant land,
Yeah.
In our comfort of our own homes, and we'll watch the news and see little clips of it. But but the impact right now in this space that I'm experiencing is every aspect of life is being touched.
Yes.
yes. So
Yeah.
true. So I'm an American. I'm a Jew. I live in New Jersey, right outside of Manhattan, and we're relatively safe
Yeah.
here.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I went to Israel just now, um, I have some family in the Tel Aviv area, and I have friends in Jerusalem, and our headquarters is there. And I was traveling back and forth. In Tel Aviv, on first impression, it looked like life was normal.
Hmm.
People are driving around, walking here and there. Sometimes they go to the beach. And I was talking to the taxi cab driver, and I said, "Looks like nobody's affected here." And he said, "Oh boy, are you wrong?" Right? Because I don't speak Hebrew. I don't know what they're talking about. It just looks like
Right.
everything's moving around and normal.
Yeah.
Said, let me tell you, firstly, everybody's miserable. Morale is terrible. There are reservists going to the army who don't know if they have a job to come back home to,
Mhm.
people whose businesses have shut down because when you're gone in the army for an extended period of time,
Right.
the workplace has to go on. He said it's just you see people driving around, but it's just miserable. That's the first thing.
Wow.
Then my aunt puts the TV on, and I'm looking at a war zone, right? The rocket after rocket is falling in the north, and there's fighting in the south, and several soldiers were killed. All their bios were up online, and they're 19 or 21, or somebody's 35 and has a bunch of kids, and it's like devastating,
Yeah.
heartbreaking. And the only time I saw a break in all that fighting was when they put on the presidential debate, or there's politics in Israel as well, and politics in Europe going on, and it just looked horrible. Then I started traveling around the country, and you see the army everywhere. And then
Wow.
I went to visit the South. So I don't know if you'd like to hear about my experiences in the South, but that was really a big first for me.
Okay.
Well, I tell you what we're going to do is we're going
Yes.
to take a commercial break.
Okay.
Periodically, as you see, we have the information scrolling on the screen.
Okay.
And my prayer is that people are getting impact
Yes.
to a point where they care.
Yes.
Because, with the world we live in, unfortunately, anything can happen at any time.
So true.
It could be a different type of war that people are experiencing in life, and people that are going through PTSD and, having all these needs and everything,
Right.
they have their own war zone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when we come back, we're going to talk about some techniques you guys use and maybe dive into some other things. But I want to encourage our viewers to get in touch with Naomi, get in touch with OneFamily, fundsusa.org, and every little bit counts.
Yes.
It's very important.
So true.
If
So
you want to touch lives, it's organizations like this that, as she explained things, that this is real.
yeah.
Right.
This is real. It's just not the 6 o'clock news, or here in
Right.
dinner time, the 5:30 news or whatever. This is real life, and people are affected by it, each and every day, each and every hour, and all aspects of life. So before we take commercial break, I just wanted to get that in and encourage the people. And don't forget to subscribe, to like, to share. And I tell you what, we'll be right back.
Thank you.
What's happening, y'all? I don't know if you've ever seen a walking tree. This is actually called a walking tree because these are the roots that come from up high, not down in the ground. They grow into the ground. They're both on both sides of the tree. And if the tree wants to move this way, the roots in the back die, and then it grows out more roots in the front. And the only way the tree can move forward is if the roots in the back die, and it grows more roots in the front, and then the tree moves in that direction. The only way you're going to be able to walk with God and move forward with God is if your roots behind you die. Your old relationships, your old connections, your old views of yourself, they have to die in order for you to move forward. And then you grow new roots in the direction that God wants you to go. The Bible says if anyone's in Christ, the old is gone and the new has come. So let go of these old roots, let go of these old ideas, these old relationships, these old perceptions, and start moving forward and reaching out forward to apprehend what Christ has apprehended for you, to become the person He created you to be.
to say I love the question about how to deal with stress, being overwhelmed, depression, and anxiety. I would really say to seek help, whether it's with a pastor or a friend, a parent, or a mental health therapist or a counselor. I would say seek help. There's no shame in seeking help. And everyone that's in therapy or counseling does not have a mental disorder. That's a stigma. You don't have to be diagnosed, or it doesn't mean something's wrong with you if you're seeing a therapist. People see therapists for all different types of reasons, so it's nothing wrong with it. So I think we as a culture should continue to embrace it.
And we are back. Thank you for tuning in to Fire and Life Talk with our very special guest, Naomi. We just gonna say Naomi.
Perfect. Thank you.
We've been having a dynamic discussion and
Yes.
and really getting educated on her experience, her visit to Israel, and I think you said the past week. You were there last week.
I was.
Okay, and then she's executive director of OneFamily, and this is an awesome organization that's helping out on the ground in every aspect of life.
Yeah.
I'm always transparent, Naomi, especially on shows, even though it's live or whatever. But I just got just a heartfelt. When you actually put us in Israel
Yes.
and what people are experiencing. And I know you guys at OneFamily, it's nothing new. You've been doing it for a long time. How did you handle the influx of needs from this war?
From October 7th. Oh my gosh. Well, that night, our founders set up a 24-hour emergency call center. They literally got a new phone number. There were volunteers that flooded our headquarters, thank God. And there were like 20 women all on a WhatsApp group, all sitting around our boardroom, our conference room, just fielding calls and asking, someone needs a place to stay. This person needs a place to stay. We have somebody has kids with autism, 6 kids with autism, and they weren't given a hotel reservation with the rest of the evacuees. Can we find a place for them to stay? Or somebody else said, I was evacuated by the government and they told me to go to this hotel, but the hotel has never heard of me and they don't have an empty bed. What do I do? And that's in addition to all the people who didn't have access to food or shelter or clothing, right? So immediately there were people baking, there were people buying supplies, there were people packing boxes of food and supplies, blankets, toothbrushes, candy, everything. And then there were other volunteers driving to every part of the country where people didn't have to support them, right? So that was the immediate crisis. People also immediately went to hospitals. They immediately went to funerals and Shiva homes, but the amount of need was too great. We don't have the resources to reach everybody. Currently, our goal is to reach 4,000 new families who have been touched by terror since October 7th. That's huge for us. We need to triple in size in what we're bringing in and hire new people, and then we'll be able to go out and accomplish what we really want to be able to accomplish. Right now, we have certainly hired several new employees, but the employees that we have almost don't sleep. They're working around the clock. Our coordinators gave up their day off, which happens to be Friday in Israel. I don't know if everybody knows that their work week is Sunday through Thursday, and they're off on Friday and Saturday. They stopped taking Fridays off. People would bake challah, bake bread, and they would all go to the hospitals on Friday to visit all the wounded soldiers and all the people who were wounded but survived on October 7th. So now we have to scale and hire as many people as we can to go out and continue our work.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So you've had to keep some services in place as they were, but you had to do a lot of adapting.
Yes. So what another thing that we had to pivot on, right? October 7th. So I started to mention before October 7th, there would be an attack at a bus stop, right? Maybe a
Right.
few people were stabbed, or maybe somebody drove a car into a crowd. Either way, I mean, horrible, but there's like a short list of names that you could write down on a legal pad, and you can go find those people, or you can visit those families or those hospital rooms, whatever. After October 7th, we could not individually call and find that many people.
Mm-hmm.
So we started having events all around the country and publicizing them. So instead of saying, hey, Sarah, I know you lost your husband. We're having a widow's support group or a bereaved person support group at this time in this area. Now we'll say, if you live in Jerusalem and you're a new widow, please come to this place at this time. And we blast it out everywhere.
That's good.
And we ask people to come to our event. And we're having events in cities all around the country. If you're a bereaved parent in the South, please sign up for our retreat to Cyprus. If you're a bereaved sibling in Tel Aviv, please come to this event at this time. And we offer food and drinks and fun activities to make it appealing that people would want the help.
Yes.
And it's free. They just have to show up. But then once they're there, we have psychologists with the curriculum, and we're going to introduce them to a new community of peers who are in very similar emotional positions, right? So we have now gotten them with the lure of some fun activity and some free food and drinks into this setting, and they're going to learn therapeutic tools for resistance and for coping with grief and trauma and for continuing life. Hopefully that activity and that food will add a little bit of joy. And when they're making new friends, they now have a whole lot of people that they can call on those mornings when it's just too hard to get out of bed.
Yes.
Right.
They can always call us. We're going to check in on them whether they want us to or not. We have like professional friends, right, who are going to call them every week or every day if they need that level of support, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Make house visits. But in addition to that professional friend from OneFamily, they now legitimately have a cohort of peers that are all going through the same thing and have the same therapeutic tools that they can talk to. And because we've been doing this for so many years, we've seen how it works and the domino effect and how they become best friends. And they're with each other for the Yahrzeit, which is the Jewish it's like the remembering of the day the person passed away, which is honored every year, along with the birthdays, the life milestones, right? It's like the good times and the bad times together. These people are here for each other. They become thick,
Yeah.
And that's part of the positive domino effect that we want to create for them.
In all of that, what you said, it reminds me of just love.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we have
we love each other.
Yeah. We have a friend that always says, I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Oh, that's just like us. That's exactly it. That's perfect.
Yeah, but it's just awesome how a nation is uniting.
Yes.
This is a two-part question. Are you getting resources from the government? And also, are you teaming up with other organizations to get your plan going?
Okay, so let me kind of answer this. It's not so much that the government gives us money. We do collaborate closely with the government social services in Israel, because the government provides certain benefits to terror victims.
Okay.
So the first thing that we're going to do for our victims is to help them fill out all that paperwork and deal with the bureaucracy to get what's entitled to them. We work closely with the social services agency part of that government. Sometimes, like any social services organization, sometimes someone's file is lost. Sometimes they're not getting, they're getting a small amount, but they're really entitled to a large amount. And then we got to advocate for them, and we got to nudge somebody, and we got to up it.
I'm laughing because, I might get in trouble with this one, but I thought that was just in the U.S.
Right. Right. We have all had trouble with the government a little bit. It's very
Yeah.
hard.
Bless the government, Naomi. We bless the government.
Bless the government, and God should give them clarity and
Yes.
Yeah.
but hasn't everybody had a glitch with their driver's license at one point
Yes.
or another? Or
Yeah.
hasn't the IRS misplaced a check or gotten a number wrong at some point or another, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever tried to call one of those agencies to fix it? That's
Yeah.
like it's possible. They made a movie about that, right? License to drive.
Well, we have to realize that all of this is ran by human beings. So
Right.
Yes,
Right.
they're all human beings, and poor Israel's social services department. I would not want to work there during a war. Do you know how many people are applying?
Yeah.
And they're entitled to it, but the government is at war, so they can't do everything that they would like to do, or they promised this amount, but they're still at war, and there's a shortage, and it's like and we all know things go wrong when there's war, right? And maybe God will maybe God will bless us with peace in the Middle East sooner rather than later, right?
Yes.
So yes, there are glitches in that social services department, and I imagine around the world there are glitches in social services department.
Yes, it is.
To say the least, but yeah, we're thankful.
Yes.
And it seems like a great plan, but sometimes, when you're overwhelmed like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Who's not overwhelmed at this time,
That's
right?
right.
Everybody's overwhelmed.
Exactly.
So we try to help with things like that. There's somebody who's entitled to certain benefits, but she's not staying in the hotel where the government put her because she has extreme medical needs, and she actually needs to stay very close to a certain hospital.
Right.
So it's like 9 months into the war, and the government hasn't been able to send her social services check because they haven't figured out she's not in the hotel where they put her.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So I told you before, there was a family who was blessed with 6 children, 3 of whom have autism. And they live right on the other line from all the people who are evacuated. So like their neighbors were evacuated on the other side of the street, and they're not evacuated. But 3 children with autism who have 15 seconds to run and get into a shelter before the rocket hits can't be done. Right? So that's like a special situation where they need extra help. I told you earlier that we have support groups for engaged brides whose husbands were murdered. Well, they're not, their fiancés were murdered before they got to the wedding. That's not on anyone's radar. There's no government benefits for somebody in that category, just like we help bereaved grandparents, right? Or bereaved parents. So let's say there's a 25-year-old woman who, God forbid, just lost her husband. There's a 25-year-old girl who's now a widow and raising 2 or 3 tiny children on her own. Those grandparents lost a son-in-law. Their daughter, who they know and love, is now a widow, and now they're actively involved in taking care of their daughter and maybe those 3 grandkids. But they're not an official category of anybody, except life was dumped on its head, those grandparents' lives were shattered just as much as anybody else, but they don't fall under a labeled category.
Right.
So OneFamily has now created a group for them because it's so obvious. There's so many of them and they need so much help and support, and there's nobody else to listen to them or be there for them. There's another problem. You're not considered an orphan if you're 18 years old or over.
Oh, wow.
Right? But there was a rocket that fell in the north last week or 2 weeks ago that killed a couple in a car. They had 3 children. The oldest was 18, and then, I don't know, maybe 16 or 15. And then there were 3 children, right? 2 of them are going to get the benefits of the orphan, but that 18-year-old is magically not an orphan because he had a birthday.
Right.
OneFamily knows psychologically that doesn't hold up, even if we have government rules, right? If the legal definition of an orphan is you must be younger than 18 years of age, the grief and trauma that goes along with both parents being murdered is not going to be any different because one of the kids is 18 and one of the kids is 16.
That's right.
So we have a group for like adult orphans. or adult
Yeah.
children who are bereaved of both of their parents. It does not hurt any less because you had an 18th birthday.
Right.
We have a community of people, or we have a community of orphans who lost their parents when they were kids. They've been with us for 2 decades. They're now young adults, married, starting businesses and having children. They still don't know how to be parents because they never had role models. So we still have this group going. And that orphan group opened up to the brand new orphans of October 7th to take them in under their wing. Nobody knows how to show them how to navigate government benefits or navigate life better than somebody who's been through it before. So we have these like angels, right, who have been through the worst, and they want to help somebody else get through their darkest moments right now.
Wow. You guys are doing an awesome job. I mean, creating groups that never existed, within a wartime. It's not like the war is over and saying, hey, okay, we need this, we need that.
Right.
You're addressing the problem as it's created.
Yes.
And so again, I want to promote that. As a matter of fact, we have a video, I think, of one of the programs that you have. If it's okay, we'll go ahead and play it.
1 second before you show that video, I want to tell you that we actually had, just because we're still talking about the government, we had an event for widows and orphans at the government building in Israel. It's called the Knesset. It's like maybe the equivalent of Capitol Hill here, where everybody comes together, right?
Okay.
And the widows were heard, and there was programming for the orphans, and the government officials got up there and thanked us for filling in the gaps that they can't fill themselves. So just to pull that all together, that happened. I'm not even sure if it was a month ago yet. And it was a beautiful event where members of both parties, both sides of the aisle in Israel, the equivalent, came together to really honor the widows and the orphans, because it's so terrible. There's so many, and the government is, everybody's obligated to go to the army, right? So the government is grateful for everybody's service, and they realize that comes with obligation to take care of the bereaved families afterwards. And so they truly thanked OneFamily for stepping in where they're not able to do so.
Amen.
Yeah, it was amazing to have acknowledgement for that, like the grandparents or the engaged people or orphans that are 18 years old and things like that.
Right.
So that was really nice. And that's just nice working together,
Well, that's what I was going to bring up. Before we play this video, I wanted to say that however you feel about war, Naomi, what you're explaining today is what unity looks like.
Absolutely.
From the government to the grassroots. This is what unity looks like for your neighbor.
And does your audience know that there are so many more people other than Jews living in Israel, that Israel has such a diverse population?
Right.
OneFamily embraces all of them, from all races and all religions, all genders, all ages, all backgrounds. We love everybody.
Yes.
Right? Like you said before, whether you want us to or not, we love you all. We're going to help you all.
And ain't nothing you can do about it.
Ain't nothing you can do about it. We're gonna give everybody services, whether they want it or not. We're here to help and spread love.
It looks like we had an interview. I think it was last year, with a gentleman that had visited Israel and actually invited us over. And I'm like, hey, man, what are you talking about? Y'all at war right now. It might not be a good time to come over. He's like, no, it's all good. The almond trees are budding and the hills are green. I'm like, okay, what part are you in? And he was actually broadcasting from Jerusalem. We didn't know it. We thought he was on the East Coast. But he did. One thing he said, he says, hey, there's Muslims, there's, he named all type of religions and ethnicities. I hope I'm saying that right. That were in the trenches fighting for that nation.
Absolutely. So there are Druze and Christians and Arab Israelis. There are foreign nationals. There are people who come from all different countries to see Israel, and Jews are very diverse amongst themselves, right? So whether you're religious or not religious, no matter what color your skin is or what background you come from, if you're a victim of terror in Israel, OneFamily would love to help you.
OneFamily. It just hit.
Yeah.
OneFamily. It
We
just
are
hit.
one big family. That's
One
it.
big family.
We're together.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's play this video and then
Yes.
you can comment on it.
Okay.
My name is Galina Merdler, and my family and I have had the privilege to adopt 3 families from the South as part of the Adopt a Family program of OneFamily. It is something that's very meaningful to us because we want to help in any way possible to those who lost loved ones on October 7th and really do need our help. It is hard to understand how much help is really needed, and to help an individual family cope, at least in some ways, with the grief and with the practical world problems that are created by losing a loved one, such as financial issues, taking care of a child or a grandchild, basic things that suddenly become really big problems, is extremely, extremely important. For me particularly, it's important to have that personal connection, to see the families, to understand their needs, and to understand how to address them, and at least in some small way, to be part of the solution. I encourage everyone to participate.
Yeah, I think that's just awesome.
Yeah, Galina is amazing. So one of the families that Galina adopted, the wife, it's the widow survivor, her husband was a police officer on the night of October 6th. And his shift ended. He could have left and gone home, but there was no way. You know, he raced in and out of the music festival area, loading people into his car and driving away as fast as he could. And he went back and forth maybe 6 or 7 times before they lost contact with him, and his life was lost. Now, both people worked in that family, but they have 3 small children. And now that the husband is gone, I believe the wife had just given birth. Maybe, you know, she has a baby, but there's like a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old and a baby. She can't go back to work because she has nobody to watch the 3 little kids. And her husband was just murdered, so they lost the larger income.
Yeah.
So that Adopt a Family program is a large financial gift. And that's probably going to pay for several months of a nanny to watch her 3 kids so she can go back to work, right? Those are like the life practical situations that come up that maybe not everybody realizes behind the scenes. Like, you hear it's horrible.
Yeah.
A police officer was murdered, but you don't realize there's such a terrible domino effect. Not only is the widow grieving and the children are grieving, they also don't have money to support themselves.
Right.
So she has to hire like a full-time nanny to cook, clean, and watch the kids so she can go somewhere else and work full-time. But that's so expensive, she can't afford it.
Right.
So in order to sort of make that family whole again, we have to find a childcare solution for her.
Right.
That, you know, helps out with some food and cleaning.
Yes.
A $10,000 donation is only going to cover a full-time nanny for that lady for 4 or 5 months in Israel. Right? So that just gives you one small idea of the type of resources that we need to kind of put families back together again to the extent that we can. And you've seen all over the news, right? Many, many homes were burned to the ground and all the possessions were stolen. There are people still living in hotels with no home, no clothing, no possessions, nowhere to go back to. Jobs were lost, farms were destroyed. So they literally needed a whole new life. We offer job retraining for people who are injured or displaced and need to start a new career. But those people probably need new homes first. They have to figure out where they're living in order to find an area that's appropriate to pick the career, you know. We once helped, and I know this person personally, and he is an angel. We helped a man named Meir. He came to Israel from Russia, and he survived a really horrific stabbing attack. And The doctors, the first responders, the doctors saved his life. He was only given a 10% chance of living, but he made
wow.
it. So he's Mayor the Miracle Man.
Yeah.
But he was a cook before the attack. He stood on his feet all day cooking in a kitchen. And while his trunk was put back together, he can no longer stand all day long on his feet from pain, even though he's okay. So he needed a new career where he could spend a large part of the day sitting and not all day long standing. So OneFamily paid to have him go back to school. He wanted to be a photographer and videographer. We paid for that training. We found a donor who donated brand new equipment, and we actually hired him to be our in-house cameraman. He goes to every event.
Wow.
He did all the support groups for support for himself, and now he goes to every event and he's giving support to so many others. And you talk to him, he is the most humble and he is the sweetest guy in the world. And he just said to me last week, I always knew I wanted to do something important with my life.
Yeah.
And he's so glad that he is now able to give back and meet so many people and talk to them and help them. And, he sits in the office for part of the day and then he goes to the events and captures all those beautiful moments. And that is a life repaired. He said, he would never obviously ask to be in a terror attack, but boy, did he make something beautiful out of something miserable.
Right.
That silver lining is so good. He loves every minute, and he wouldn't change it if he could,
That's
Yeah.
good.
And I think all of that start with being grateful.
Yes.
That's what I heard. Gratitude.
Oh, he's so
Yes.
grateful.
Yeah.
100%. I
Gratitude.
would recommend that to your listeners. You were saying, how do you help people at home? It's like resilience, gratitude. Life is hard for all of us, whether it's, we don't really hear about terrorism in the United States.
Right.
Snipers, school attacks, right? But in general, we don't have that kind of environment.
No.
But everybody has trouble.
Yes.
We all are going through something or other. So
Yes.
learning how to be resilient, learning to reach out to friends and a support network makes so much difference. Expecting trouble and expecting to be able to do those hurdles for sure is going to help everybody everywhere. Life is difficult sometimes, but being grateful for the little things will absolutely change your mindset. 100%.
That's good.
Definitely.
So good.
So as they put Mayor back together, we're asking people to give to help put many other lives together. Again, no amount is too small. Sometimes we say, wow, she mentioned $10,000. I ain't got no $10,000.
I know.
But everything adds up to help people put their lives back together again. We experience here in America devastating hurricanes, tornadoes, and you mentioned some of the other tragedies that happen, in the hands of man. And we've seen it where lives need to be put back together again.
Yes.
And this is what we're experiencing in Israel today. That, I'm trying to be careful with my words, but October 7th destroyed a lot of lives. It took a lot of lives. And now people are trying to put it back together again. So we just ask that you give. And there's the website. And I tell you what, we're going to take another commercial break. When we come back, we'll come back with segment 3, addressing PTSD and OneFamily's holistic approach. So again, give. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share. And we'll be right back.
God to all this strength is your mind. That is the place, the center of everything that is within you. It must be active and alive so you can bring your instructions to your heart. Your heart will give the instructions to your body, and your body is going to execute that command. You are resilient. You can bounce back quickly from any adversity, any opposition that comes your way. Remember, always be awesome.
And we are back. Oh, we switched up on the screen.
You did.
We're back with Naomi, and Naomi's just sharing the conditions in Israel that are caused by the attack on October 7th, and also sharing the needs of a community, of a nation. And we continue to ask that you would be a part of that. So now we're in segment 3, and I know Gina, Naomi, and I have been talking and kind of left you out, so I know you have a question.
What are some common symptoms of PTSD? Can you just elaborate on the feelings of?
Yeah, some people have the physical symptoms in their body
Yes.
of being hyper vigilant, right? Of that amygdala is always turned on. It might seem like they're overly aggressive or overly angry from so much stress and trauma, and it might make it harder for them to have relationships. It might make it harder for them to hold down jobs. Sometimes they can't sleep from the trauma, and other people constantly replay the memory over and over and over again and can't get out of the traumatic event itself and the grief, and they kind of burrow down deeper into that hole instead of coming out better. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So it can be different for everyone, but those are some of the common problems with PTSD. And there are many different ways to heal. Healing can be a very unique journey for each person. Just like special education teachers know, you need an individual educational plan because everybody learns differently, right? And we all have different strengths and weaknesses. Healing from trauma is very similar in that you need a unique healing plan. And of course, we have the professional counsel in place. We have the peer counseling in place. We also offer holistic treatments. Different types, a variety. You know, there's EMDR, there's stellate ganglion blocks, there's deep tissue massage, there's yoga, mindfulness, meditation, gratitude, right? That's really about teaching flexibility of mind and body to be able to see things through a different perspective. If we can see a traumatic a traumatic incident with the lens of gratitude for a silver lining or a new life, or if you can find any drop of goodness. And there's nothing good about war, right? There's nothing good about having a relative murdered or tortured or, I'm not saying that, I'm not recommending that.
Right.
But if you can wake up and say, I'm so glad my daughter is sitting next to me. I'm so glad I have a healthy body. There's food in the house. My friend is going to come visit me later. It's a sunny day. However small it is, that the attitude of gratitude can literally save your life and change your life.
Good. Naomi, I was in the military here in the U.S., and I personally experienced some PTSD, and how it affected those that were close to me was really as tremendous as what I was going through as well. So when you mention about what we call here getting stuck, not seeing a way out, with me personally, like I said, I share on this platform all the time, is that I couldn't get out of my own head. I was replaying things, and with that, going down what we call a rabbit hole, things got dark for me. I couldn't see a way out. So, if any of our viewers are experiencing that, or we know someone that's experiencing that, get some help. You know, Naomi just mentioned a few things, and I experienced a few of those. I practiced a few of those, and it brought me out. But again, as you said before, each person is unique.
Yes.
You know, each person is unique. I know you and Gina share about the special needs children.
Yes.
And that's one thing. And I'm kind of shifting in the middle of all that. But that's one thing we didn't talk about is the children.
Yeah.
And how they approach this and how they view it and their mindset. Can you share a little bit of that?
Sure. Well, first, because you were so vulnerable and opened up, you know, I will share right back with you that I also suffer from PTSD, unrelated to trauma, to terror, but I have my own trauma that I have to overcome, right? So I have been there with you in that rabbit hole, and it's really hard to overcome, right? Making that phone call to get help can sometimes be the hardest part of the process.
Yes.
That's why OneFamily reaches out to the terror victims usually. We know they need us. We know it's really hard to pick up the phone.
Right.
But yes, reaching out to professionals and to peer support groups can change your life truly, right?
Yes.
And then there's also creative outlets, right? If you're not ready to talk about it with anyone, we have writing therapy and drama therapy and therapy and therapy. And for our children, we have a whole youth department for every age, all through young adults. We have a youth department with all kinds of activities, right? And the key is to get them to come together for some kind of fun activity. And they find out that all the new friends they're making, they're in the And then a counselor can start talking to them, and there's some safe space and safe people for them to share their feelings with, whereas they had never felt safe or comfortable sharing before. And that can just change your life. And we do that for terror victims in Israel, but I would certainly advocate for everybody in America or anybody else in the world, and just let you know with the biggest caring heart and open arms that I have been there. And making the call is the hardest part, but there are people who want to help and really effective ways for you to receive that help. It will work.
Yes, definitely. Well, I tell you what, Naomi, time goes by fast.
So fast.
We're coming up to the end of the show. We want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us. And that last segment was very short, but very impactful, because it's just another aspect of what OneFamily is doing. Yeah, and that's truly the name. I mean, all the research and going to the website and the newsletters and everything, getting ready for the show, it just clicked. OneFamily.
Yeah, we are family. We are help with a hug. We're going to give you a hug and a kiss also. That's how it works.
I love it. So we're just going to continue to reach out to our viewers, which are really literally all around the world. And again, we can't thank you enough for coming on.
Yes.
And if you ever want to come on again, because I can't say if you do anything new, because you're doing something new every day.
We are something new every day. And yes, I would be honored. And thank you so much. And big hugs and kisses to the entire audience and both of you. Thank you so much for having me on.
And we love you, and ain't nothing you can do about it.
Right back at you.
So we just hope that as a viewer, we just hope today's discussion with Naomi was insightful and inspiring to you, and OneFamily's incredible work as emotional first responders in Israel is truly life-changing. So remember, stay encouraged, stay empowered, and get equipped yourselves to live your best life. And that's one thing you guys do. You do all of that. That's our thing: empowerment, encouragement, and equipping. Not necessarily in that order, but that's what you guys do every day. And we are so appreciative. You really have touched us today. If you can, stay on. We're going to close out, but you stay on, okay?
Okay, I will. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So don't forget to subscribe, to share, to like, and join us next week for another engaging conversation. We appreciate you. God bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Fire and Life Talk, where Jesus is Lord. If you would like more information